Welcome along. So round 3, really interesting. It's fair to say Ireland and Cardiff, far trickier assignment than advertised. Wales 8 points clear in the second half. Ireland rallied to win by 9, 27 points to 18. Then at Twickenham, Finn Russell, kicking boots deserted him. 3 Scottish tries to England's 1 was not good enough for the Scots. So a 16-15 points win for Steve Borthwick, although the natives a little bit restless with the style of play. And then a French statement of intent ahead of round 4 in Rome. 7-1 split on the bench. Like, just to be blunt about it, they smashed Italy, completely overpowered them, and then had the panache to score as well. 73 points on the board, 11 tries to Italy's 24. And so really round 4 with France and Dublin always felt like the game at the outset of the championship, and that is even more so now. Our rugby coverage on Indo Sport brought to you by Energia. Energia sponsors rugby in Ireland at all levels. Grassroots with the Energia AIL. They are official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. The Energia Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion. They're trying to welcome everybody of all abilities to participate in the game. And if you want to learn more about their rugby partnerships and find out about their exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Ian Madigan is with us. Hello again.
Hey Joe, delighted to be on. What a weekend of rugby.
You're seeing too much of me lately, so apologies. This broad view of the championship, this is, I mean, we always sort of said, oh, this, feels like this could come down to round 4, France and Dublin. So with their points difference now, which is a gargantuan 91 points, France that is, on account of what they did to Italy and Wales. Ireland are on 28, so you're not going to catch plus 91 from plus 28. So really, even if France win without a bonus point in Dublin, and say Ireland even do get a losing bonus point, that puts them on 15 points apiece. They have vastly superior points difference. France have the Scots in round 5. You'd make them heavy favourites. So, give or take, respect to England, this feels like kind of a championship playoff in round 4, like amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, keep an eye on what the bookies are pricing it up. Obviously, they've got the best in class analysts in there themselves, and to win the championship before this weekend, Ireland were I think 1-2 or 4-9, and France were 3-1. Whereas now after the weekend's rugby, Ireland didn't get a bonus point win, which would have been expected, and France comfortably got a bonus point win and have significantly extended their points difference advantage. And as you touched on there, if France were to beat Ireland, for example, 4 league points to 1, and then they were to go to Murrayfield and beat Scotland 5 league points to 0, then they would most likely win the championship. They would win the championship effectively. Whereas before the weekend, you would have expected both teams to get a bonus point, which would have meant France were coming to Dublin and would have needed to beat us 4-0 or 5-1. And that makes a big difference, It does, because not that we'd be playing the game to lose within 7 points or to score 4 tries, but it is now winner takes all, in my opinion. I think that French team, if they do beat Ireland, they'd have all the momentum and they'd be going and playing Scotland, and I wouldn't be betting against them to not get a bonus point win there.
No, so it does cast the Irish, not the win necessarily, but the points tally from Wales in a slightly different light. It has been a costly-ish round 3 in that sense for Ireland. It just really focuses minds for the French game. So I'm fascinated to get your thoughts on it. A couple of things. Ireland not at their best. We'll dig into in what areas and why in a moment. But Ireland not at their best. Wales much improved. 14 men for 20 minutes. The emotion of a home crowd. And we had a real game here. So your overarching thoughts on the win?
Yeah, I was very impressed with Ireland's resilience. That would be the biggest positive I'd take from the game. I think they went into it expecting it would be easier to attack against Wales than it turned out to be. And then you throw in the mistakes that we made in the first half, and there was a lot of them. And I'd include mistakes being the scrum penalties as well. You then throw in the red card curveball before half time. Ireland were under big pressure. They'd lost all momentum in the game, and what impressed me was their ability to change the game plan they had going into the game at halftime and then implement it in the second half. I've been part of so many teams where we say after the game, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. It's one thing realizing it then. It's a very different skill realizing it during a game, being able to get 15, 23 guys on the same page and implementing that. And like the big changes I saw second half, we kicked more, and we kicked more off 9. I thought Gibson Park in particular. Obviously, we've the 50-22 that Prendergast put in, a few more probing kicks, and then we relied on our defence more. We were more comfortable defending, and as the game went on, there's no doubt Wales did fatigue, and they struggled to kind of keep the gain line. I know that opportunity on 72 minutes where they nearly get over. But it was that kind of tweak in the game plan and being able to stick to it that certainly impressed me.
Why do you think at halftime they said the right thing to do here is to kick more off 9?
I think it was because momentum was gone. They wanted to force Wales to play from deep, and it uses up a huge amount of mental and physical energy having to exit from your own 22, especially against a team like Ireland where we contest so much at the breakdown, so much at the line out, that to get from your 22 even up to the 10-metre line requires a huge effort.
Presumably that's a fairly go-to tactic in those kind of circumstances. Okay, it's not going well. We're not imposing ourselves on the game the way we usually might. Let's kick more. Let's see what they can do from their own end. That's be a standard go-to plan B?
Yeah, it would. And, we struggled initially after half-time to stick to that plan. We get caught playing around the middle of the field, and we make a mistake. You could say Wales forced the turnover. Rowlands picks it up, and then it was probably the best try of the game that Blair Murray makes the break down the edge and puts Rodgers away for what was a brilliant try. And full credit to Wales. The kind of attacking shape that they found there really exposed us, and that was the moment you're going, geez, we're under massive pressure now. But we were very lucky that the 20-minute red card rule came into effect.
We sure are. There is an irony that the IRFU, along with France, were one of the 2 countries to vote against it. Didn't want it. I'd say a few Blazers thinking, you know what, maybe it's not a bad rule on Saturday.
And you can see why we would vote against it, because we're typically a very disciplined team. The French, not so much. I think their history of red cards, you'd think they'd be voting for a 10-minute red card. But no, look, we got lucky with that. And I'm still not made up on that rule, to be honest. I think a red card's a red card at the end of the day. And if you make a mistake like that, you and your team deserves to be punished appropriately. And I'm not sure if a 20-minute red card is enough of a punishment.
Let's circle back to that, because that is interesting. You said one other thing there which caught my ear. Ireland, you said, would have expected to have found it easier to attack against that Welsh defence. So this Welsh defence was much improved, or Ireland disappointing in attack?
A combination of the two. We forced things in the first half, and look, Dan Sheehan, he's a world-class player, but maybe the burden of captaincy, he was forcing, trying to make things happen. There was one offload in particular that he went for, and when I'm looking at that, I'm not looking at the outcome. I'm looking at, was it on? Like, obviously, look, the balls ended up on the ground, but you're looking at the picture around him. You're kind of, that was a poor assessment by him of was it the right time to go for that offload with how the game was going. We get to a point in that first half where, look, we've created a lovely opportunity down the left, and Osborne wasn't able to execute the right to left pass to Ringrose. Had he executed that pass, Gary goes over and scores. The game then goes to 17-3. Like, the doubt that Wales have going into the game. Look, obviously Sherritt's come in, he's tried to fill them with confidence, but you go 17-3 down at home, it's not far off game being over. Whereas they managed to hang in there, and before you know it, the tide turns, the red card happens, and then they're going in at halftime 13-10. Very different complexion. Wales did defend well. They were very physical in the tackle. They contested the breakdown well. They filled the field. Well, and that frustrated us. We weren't able to work our multi-phase attack.
That moment where Osborne doesn't throw the pass ultimately for Ringrose, it captured something about the feeling we probably all had at that stage, because it cut to the coach's box and Easterby kind of bangs the table. But Paul O'Connell smiles. You know, it's like um, and it just betrayed not an arrogance, but probably a feeling that okay, we're going to be fine here. That would have been nice to get. We didn't get it. Like I don't think, for instance, same thing happens against France. I don't think anyone's smiling, and it was that kind of curious game where a bit like bankruptcy. Slowly at first, things just started to compound and happen, and it culminates with the 18-point to 10 scoreline where everyone's like, "Oh, now it's serious." But like, we all felt that the avenue for Wales to win this game was fast start.
Yeah.
Fast start, emotion, boom, away we go. Whereas actually Ireland scored a try. Like if you said to anyone, Ireland are going to score a try here in 10 minutes, then we'd all think, okay, well, like Wales are going to crumble. That's why it was such an interesting game. It took an unexpected turn.
Yeah, it did. And I think it's interesting the point you make there on the coach's reaction. Easterby knew that was a big moment, you know, and it comes back to you don't give a sucker a chance. If you get the opportunity to kill them in sporting terms, you've got to take that shot. And that was a moment. It came early in the game, and he knew there and then that is a big moment away from home in the Millennium Stadium. And
did you think it was a big moment? Because I
did think it was a big moment.
Did right? Okay, yeah.
No, I felt that was a big moment because it wasn't coming easy to us. The game had ebbed and flowed, and when you get those opportunities, you simply have to take them. And look, not that it's just natural human reaction that you begin to think maybe today's not our day. You know, no matter how resilient you are, the scrum wasn't going well. There was multiple players making mistakes. That you're trying to look to yourself and go, look, back to basics, focus on what I can do. But when those things are happening around you, it can be difficult to keep that positive mindset.
Yeah. Do you remember Ireland, Gibson Park took a tap when they were still down to 14 men in their own, just outside their own 22, really near the touchline. That was kind of seized upon as mismanagement of the game, but also like a sense of, well, we're just better than these. Let's just start playing again. Let's just jouer and like we'll beat them. And that was kind of a misreading. You know, you could put that in the same bracket as the O'Connell smile, a misreading of the circumstances. I don't know what you thought about that moment.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit off script. And I think, look, Gibson Park, he's one of our best players. He's got license to trust his instincts, and you don't want to take that away from him. But in the context of the game, that's one moment that you have an opportunity to slow things down, have a few little mini conversations, whether it's at the line, like before the line out, what we're doing in the backs, what's needed to manage the clock before we go in at halftime. Maybe we should go back down the short side and just play a high percentage play, get the ball up in the air, create a contest and play the game in the right areas.
Yeah.
When you take a quick tap like that, all that goes out the window. Players are then scrambling to try and find their attacking shape. Yeah, it was. I was surprised at that.
What do you think was going through his head?
He's seen something that's an opportunity, and he's just gone, I'm taking it. And it's so split second that if you don't take it in that instance, the opportunity's gone. Like a quick tap has to be taken quickly
by
because
definition, yeah.
Every split second is an extra defender getting back set.
Yeah, it was interesting. Afterwards, James Ryan was interviewed, and he described it as a very satisfying win. And like, he was kind of buoyed, you know. James Ryan isn't always like this ebullient character, but he was kind of buzzed up. I thought the adrenaline was pumping, and he was like, it's a really satisfying win. You know, test of character, test of resolve, a first-time captain, 14 men. Like, a lot of things could have led to panic, and it didn't happen, and they dug deep to win it out. Do you think that's how the dressing room will feel about it? That actually, yeah, we had a shit day at the office there, but like, yeah, that's a really good day that we won it. They'll be more in that mindset than the more, you know, us in a TV studio going, God, that wasn't very good.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the reaction that you would have internally when you're part of the game versus what, you know, the pundits and the media would how they portray the win. And you know, you think back with this team, like how resilient they are. That Scottish game when like Cian Healy goes to hooker, and you know, where Peter Manny's on the wing, and you think back to, you know, Joe Schmidt, for example, complaining, saying, "Oh, look, our bus got delayed." You know, that's more of a kind of, and trying to create an excuse. That's more of a kind of weaker mindset. This team doesn't have that. They're such a resilient bunch that they're going, look, things didn't go our way. We weren't at our best. We didn't execute as well as we could. We got a player red carded. We were stunned a bit. We had to adapt our game plan. And that's where you're kind of looking at each other in the changing room afterwards, having a drink, going, we found a way to win. That was really satisfying. And this team can win loads of different ways. And that's where you're taking confidence. It's not like you're just one-trick ponies. Things have to go your way to beat these top teams. That's not the case with this team.
The more I look at photos of Bundee Aki, this kind of collage of the white and the green and the black paint and the red, the blood, it's like, it's a pretty iconic impact that he had. He was remarkable.
He was. And it might seem like a small thing, but I was looking at him on the bench. It was literally, and Andrew said it on comms yesterday with Virgin. We were looking at him sitting on the bench, and I was going, Bundee, you're about to come on here.
Like, he does know the 10 minutes are up. I know.
You're literally about to come on in 60 seconds. You know, you'd expect him to maybe be down in the in-goal area, hitting pads, you know, getting ready to come in, firing a few passes. But this guy just has total confidence in his ability. He would have been spending that 25 minutes and through half time that Gary was off, keeping an eye on the game and going, I know exactly what I'm going to bring. I know exactly what's needed. And that is the most physical Bundee Aki that he can bring. And the way he carried the ball, the tackles he made, how he contested the breakdown. And it galvanized the team because they're looking at him going, well, this guy's completely in control. He completely believes that we're going to win this game. And he's just focusing on doing his job as well as he can. I need to do the exact same.
Who else caught your eye in a good way for Ireland?
I was impressed with Joe McCarthy. You know, he's been out for quite a while. I'm not too sure what the injury was. I think it was a very bad cut, maybe, but I could be wrong on that. But having looked at the other games at the weekend, where like the likes of Scotland struggle, they can get in behind teams. Like they got in behind England multiple times, but then they just simply don't have the power to keep the gain line and to keep creating quick ruck ball. Right. Their second rows just simply don't have it. Similar with the Italians. And you look at the teams that have the most impact, like the French power was Italy just could not cope with it. They kept getting quick ball, kept Dupont on the front foot. And it's those big carries from Joe McCarthy, like the one he makes before Jack Conan's try. Like he's barreled through 2-3 guys. The ruck speed is like 1 second. Gets the ball in Jack Conan's hands. He finishes it. Another big carry he had in the second half. Now, I don't want to condone injuring players, but he has gone on a barnstorming carry and run over Anscombe. Anscombe, unfortunately, has had to go off injured. And that had a huge impact on the game. Anscombe was playing really well. But what I'm trying to get across is it's these big, powerful efforts when he's carrying the ball and these big, powerful efforts when he's making impactful tackles. They've such a big impact on the game. Like we've seen throughout this Six Nations, impact tackles result in turnovers because of the breakdown laws. You drive someone back, you pile guys into the breakdown with a counter ruck or trying to poach the ball. And it's probably 70 or 80% after an impact tackle, you're getting a turnover. And that has such a big influence on the game because suddenly you're kicking the ball to touch. If Prendergast is doing it, you're probably 40 meters down the touchline. If Ramos is doing it, you could be 50 meters down the touchline, and you're flipping the field, and all the momentum goes from the opposition.
Yeah. It's terribly easy to kind of overcomplicate rugby sometimes when you talk about it in those terms, and maybe because backline play is so interesting and intricate, and we've had lots of great out halves and backline players that, you know, a little snazzy play that cuts open a defence is what we judge a performance on a lot sometimes. But listening to you, he's really big. Smash, smash, smash. A lot of good things are going to happen. And even when you do that snazzy line break, to your point about Scotland, when they get in behind, you then need some big boys to keep the momentum of the thing going. And that's where rugby is a simple game. It
is. And because Scotland don't have that, they simply have to score within 3 phases of that line break. And we saw it multiple times in the English game. They got in behind, went to phase, went another phase. There was a couple of times where they were like 5-10 meters out from the English touchline. 5 phases later, they're back closer to their 10-meter line. They're getting hit back on every single phase. And then you look at France. Like France were under pressure, big time. And the English match was a big setback for them. Galtier is under pressure as a coach. And they have just gone back to their power game. You know, the 7-1 split they went with on the bench. and the size of their front five. I thought Giard coming in the second row had a very good game as well. And it just shows you it is sometimes a simple game. If you can keep the gain line and tire the opposition out, like they simply broke Italy at 50 minutes, that game was completely over. Yeah. And we've seen that with French opposition against UK and Irish opposition this year, the likes of Ulster, Leicester, where even Exeter, you get to the 50-minute mark and you can just tell the opposition is simply exhausted. Yeah. And then the game just really runs away at a rapid pace from them.
So, Aki, Joe McCarthy, anybody else worth a mention? A lot of people, I know Rob in studio on Virgin on Saturday felt initial mistake or two aside. Osborne, he thought was excellent, and Lowe seems to be in very good form. Gibson Park up player of the match as well. Any others we should be name checking here? Maybe that's it. I mean, it wasn't like it was a stunning day at the office.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up well. Osborne did well to bounce back from a couple of mistakes in the first half. That's a great thing to see from a young player, that they can park those mistakes, not carry them through the game or try and feel like you've got to do something spectacular to make up for those mistakes. Bundee's impact. No, I think we've covered. Our bench did well when they came on again. They shored things up.
Prendergast, the 50-22 moment you mentioned, a key moment, led to the Osborne try ultimately. Yeah. Mixed game. The good was good, the bad was bad.
It was, and that's what we've seen with Sam at times this year. It's risk reward. Like the risk of that 22 and hitting it out on the full at that juncture of the game was high. The reward was also high. He's executed that kick perfectly. Like the speed that he gets that spiral kick away, 2 steps, and he's hit the ball, 50 meters, perfect flight. Landed in a very tight landing zone over the Welsh back 3 player. We go on and score there. The risk reward of going for the spiral kick when he's outside his 22, when we are now in control of the game. We're 6 points up, and he gets slightly rushed, and he skews it off the inside of his boot. Like, Mee nearly scores off that next Welsh attack. The risk reward there for me isn't there. That's when you just go high percentage, side punt, smash it down the field, back your kick chase. They didn't need a incredible spiral kick at that moment. And the great thing about Sam is, look, his ceiling as a player is so high. His passing game, his kicking game, how he conducts the team around the pitch. He's still so young. He's going to figure this out. Like, he will have learned a huge amount from that game alone. I don't know how many professional games he's played, but it's probably in around 20 at this stage. And we forget that. And yeah, look, he did a lot of things really well as well.
On the tackle front, he saw a lot of traffic. He had to make 24 tackles. He made 16 of them and he missed 8 of them. So obviously it's a little crude kind of to ask how many should you be making on an average day, but he's kind of making one. He's missing 1 of 3 there on average. He's making 2 of 3.
Yeah, and it's always good to dive into the tackle stats themselves. So sure. you could as a player have 20 tackles in a game, and you could make 18, and that's a 90% tackle success. But if those 18 tackles are all big soak tackles and the opposition are getting over the gain line, creating quick ruck ball, that is not a good stat. If you made, for example, 15 of the 20 tackles, and within that, we'll say 7 or 5 are impact tackles, 5 they're neutral, you've got the guy on the ground quickly, and 5 are passive. The coaches and the players around you would much prefer those stats. So I'm just trying to add context.
No, you're right. And I'm also conscious there are times where Ringrose has missed 4 or 5 tackles a game, but deliberately so. Yeah.
And, Leinster have moved away from tracking missed tackles in the sense that they're now tracking to see if the missed tackle resulted in the attack being influenced in a positive way.
Yes.
So, for example, that you haven't been beaten on the outside, you've shut down the attack, you forced the attackers to go back on the inside where Leinster or Ireland have some strong defenders there. They make an impact tackle, they contest the breakdown. That is actually a good result for the team.
It's not a Ringrose missed tackle.
It's a bad result for your own personal stats, but these players are so selfless, they're willing to park that.
What about the eye test then? Your eyes. What did your sense of the game tell you about how he did defensively?
Yeah, and then to add context as well, going a centre down for an out half makes it particularly difficult because what you're looking for on phase play is you want to have a split between your out half and your two centres. You want to have at least one of you on the edge helping out your winger or outside your back row. When you lose that connection, for example, if two are on one or two or three are on one side and one's caught in a ruck and you don't have a back managing the back row, that's what the opposition want. They want to be able to expose you by running at your back rowers or your weaker defenders in those wide channels. So when you go down a centre, you're then managing the edge solo because you're not going to get any help from your other centre because he's going to have to manage the other side of the pitch. And that's where Sam got exposed for the try after half time because he's working with Peter O'Mahony on the edge. It's a 3v2. He's got to make a decision. He makes the wrong one and he gets exposed. He gets himself in a poor position. For me, what impressed me with Wales, when you have any out half, right? If you run directly at them, the out half will be able to manage it. You can do that kind of Pritt stick tackle where you pull them over the top of you, or you get your body in front sufficiently that the back row inside you can come in and cut their legs, or the centre can come in and help you hold them up, for example. The best way to expose someone who's tall or a weaker defender is you want to get them moving laterally. And once you have them moving laterally, then you can expose them. And if you get good, hard, strong runners running back at the inside shoulder of the player that's moving laterally, that is a really difficult tackle to make when you don't have the strength in your shoulders or your chest that the likes of the back row guys would have. And Wales managed to do that, I think, on at least 3 occasions with Prendergast, where he's moving laterally, they're coming back at his inside and they were able to slip past him.
Yeah. Shane Horgan was saying that actually about being a tall player as well, that when that happens, you can feel very armsy as a taller man in the tackle. Yeah,
and it's even your stride length, like at 5'10" versus 6'2", your stride length is an extra few inches longer. Your feet are in the air longer. So when someone cuts back at you, you can't adjust your body as quickly as the shorter guy. So that's where being taller, different to being a quarterback, can actually go against you when you're defending in those channels.
Okay. So all in all, good and bad. He's still taking risks when it's coming off. It's hugely advantageous, and we got to remember how few minutes he has. They've obviously said he's our guy, but I mean that was why they played him against Wales. Maybe if he had 20, 30, 40 caps to his name, maybe Crowley starts this game, but they're just trying to inject him with as many minutes as possible.
Yeah, and it's hard to see a world where he doesn't start against France, because it'd nearly be unfair on Crowley coming in with the very few minutes he's had in recent weeks at out half. It did cross my mind when Gary got that red card, would they have considered bringing Crowley on because he's defensively stronger, and that makes managing those wider channels you're a bit more secure. But I think they've made the decision to stick with it, and maybe his attack was deemed more valuable than bolstering the defense. But it did cross my mind, and they're decisions you got to make quickly as a coach.
Yeah. So in kind of broad terms, how do we kind of place this performance? Is something I'm keen to get your thoughts on. By that I mean, we came off in November where things were a bit scratchy. And then England at home, you can kind of forget now, but like the first half was very, very tricky, a little bit into the second half. It wasn't perfect, and then it was good in the second half. Round 2 against Scotland, Ireland looked amazing. But increasingly you now feel Scotland are pretty poor. And then Wales tested Ireland. And, James Lowe said, God, I felt like we were just chasing shadows in defence. That was Lowe's sense of the game. We were chasing shadows. We were really under the cosh. And this is with France obviously coming. So have we a false reading that, God, Ireland are flying? Or are you're fairly confident they're in a good place? Because we saw the handling and the mistakes again. It's kind of takes a bit of interpretation to give a firm reading of where they are.
Yeah, the enthusiasm's been tempered, and the scorecard changes when you see how the teams that you beat previously are performing after you. And then there's also the side of it is the team that you were playing. Did you get them on a going day, or did they play poorly themselves? And Scotland were poor, and obviously they got those injuries. But going into this French game, off the back of seeing how they performed at the weekend, you're kind of going, this fragility that we thought that they had, they've responded. They've gone back to this power game. It's gone back to how are we going to cope with that, as opposed to before the game. And, you could hear players talking in the interviews before the Welsh game with the coach change. They weren't focusing on that. They were focusing on Wales. They were focusing on what Ireland are going to do and how they were going to impose their game on Wales. You simply can't do this against that French side. You have to be able to shut them down in key parts of the game. You need to be able to get bodies in front, make impact tackles, slow their ruck ball down, and you have to be able to fill the field to be able to manage the speed that France possesses. After you do that, then you can start focusing on what you're going to do in attack and where you're going to play the game. And I think a key part for Ireland going into that French game is conserving their energy. And that's been a positive change that Ireland have made through this Six Nations, kind of looking to score 3, 4, 5, 6 phases, but not going into the 15, 20, 25 phase count and exhausting yourself. And if you don't score from those high passages of play, you leave yourself very exposed when it comes to defending the likes of France. So that's the kind of the blueprint I expect us to see against France. We will have some power plays to break them down, but to be in this contest, we have to be able to match them physically.
Yeah, see, it's interesting. It's how I think, like the professionals like you sort of think about it, and maybe how I sometimes think about it. I'm kind of more like the handling skills and the sharpness and how's the loop play, and actually you're like, mate, don't worry about that for now.
Yeah,
we've got to deal with Godzilla coming at us.
Yeah, and like I was talking to Jack McGrath during the week, and he'd look at the game through a different lens than I would, and he just laid it out really clearly for me. Look, there's no point in talking about this other stuff unless we can get parity here. And I think just to add a bit of flavour to like why that is important. Like if you look at, and I know it was against weaker opposition in Italy yesterday, but they rely on the power game. And they get the defence moving backwards. And then once that happens, you can't get off the line. And that's where we're seeing France getting 2, 3, 4 phases in, 2, 3, 4 passes in really easily. And you're kind of going, geez, that looks so simple. How did they all stream down the edge there? Or that was a poor missed tackle. But it's because they're just not in a strong position to be able to defend them. Whereas if you can slow that ball down and they look to go to the width, you're coming from the outside in, you've got your defender inside and outside, you're ready to cover you if you do get it wrong. And that's why Italy looked so poor in defence and got torn to shreds.
Starts with the power. Well, then let's talk power. Let's talk round 4 and Ireland-France. They went 7-1 yesterday in Rome, France. That felt in part to smash Italy, but also just a little, have a think about that for the next fortnight, Easterby. We might do that. we may do that again, we may not. They will certainly go 6-2. So Ireland's tradition with 6-2 is pretty limited in that even on the South African tour last summer, they never went 6-2 on the bench against that South African side. And actually, I thought had they, but they didn't go 6-2 against South Africa at the World Cup. Where they went 6-2 was, interestingly, of course, at Twickenham last year, and also against France last year, they went 6-2 on the bench. They're the two big times Ireland have gone 6-2 at the bench. Last year, Six Nations. Now, obviously, France last year in Marseille, France were heartbroken for the World Cup. Ireland just destroyed them. It's hard to know what impact it had. At Twickenham, that was a day where Calvin Nash had the early collision. Kieran Frawley came on for him, and then Kieran Frawley failed his HIA, and Ireland ended up with Murray at 9, and Gibson Park spending 30 minutes on the wing. So you'd have to say
Yeah.
you don't love the sound of that. So this comes with risk. But equally, if the game is so centred on power, and you can imagine 6, maybe 7 beefy French boys coming off the bench on 48, 50 minutes, then Ireland are going to have to match that power. So give us the considerations you think that the Irish management team will be having.
Yeah, I think you don't do a 5-3-6-2 or 7-1 split for the sake of it. You do it because of the personnel that are available. And that's where obviously you're going to have a sub-tight head prop. I get that. But is Furlong going to be back available? Is Doris going to be back fit? Is Kelleher going to be back fit? That has a knock-on effect, because if you take out, for example, Furlong, Kelleher, you're going, right, maybe we're not as powerful as we are with those guys. Maybe then we need to go to a 6-2 split. Those guys come back and you feel like you've got enough power in your starting pack and coming off the bench, then you've the luxury of going to a 5-3 and having the likes of Osborne, for example, in the 23 shirt. And that's where, as well, like when you're talking about power off the bench, it's not just it comes from the pack, and that's why Ireland like having a sub centre on the bench, and maybe we've seen McCluskey do it multiple times. The other side, as we touched on in the last kind of conversation, was how Ireland conserve energy. So they mightn't feel that they need to go 6-2 split because they're conserving energy of the team. They're going, of the pack that's out there, we think 4 or 5 of them can go 80 minutes or go 60 minutes, versus playing a really tiring game and being worried that, look, the legs could be gone here. And once that happens in the pack, it can get pretty ugly for you. I'm unsure what they'll do. It'd be very interesting. I think we'll probably go 6-2 split. Is my inkling. It'll be interesting to see who names their team first. There was obviously England came out and named their team really early. It could be to the last minute. And maybe we'll see a bit of silly buggers around changing the team late. Wouldn't surprise me.
If Ireland went 5-3 and France went 7-1, and Ireland found out 10 minutes before they were about to name their team that France had gone 7-1, do you think they'd change?
There could be a conversation, yeah.
Because it's interesting.
You don't want to be too reactionary.
I hear you.
Yeah. And you also bear in mind, these conversations with players have typically happened on a Monday or a Tuesday to then say,
sure,
we've actually changed our mind here. There would have to be some sort of asterisk to it. Maybe they're carrying an injury, or they didn't train particularly well. would be another one that you could hit them with.
You've been terrible at training. What? Because the direction of travel here is just startlingly obvious from the weekend. Ireland are the outlier now in that Wales, England, Scotland, Italy 6-2, France 7-1. Ireland the only team in the Six Nations that went 5-3.
Yeah, and look, Matt discussed it from a safety point of view, and I'd agree with them on that. From how I'm looking at it with young backs coming through, it's very difficult to see where they get opportunities, because typically it's going to come, the last 20 minutes of a game when either you're ahead or you've been given license to go on and chase the game. They're the opportunities you'll get in your early 20s. But if teams are consistently going with a 6-2 split, and most teams are going to have number 9 cover, that leaves 10 out to 15. What opportunities are those younger guys getting? And it's an issue that we're seeing with the likes of Frawley and Osborne, trying to forge their way into the 23 and getting enough minutes, because you can very easily go 4, 6, 8 games and have very bit part opportunities to prove yourself and forge your way back into the starting 15.
It's possibly gone too far down the tangent now. We'll come back to it on a quieter week, but I suppose just the exceptional physicality of the modern player means that we're sort of seeing hybrids now, like the Quagga Smith, who can go back and do a job at centre, or a Bottia, who is as adept as a back row or a centre. Yeah. They will become that middle ground. Is it a 5-3? Is it a 6-2? Well, we've this guy in the middle, so it's whatever we want it to be. And I think that shape and that physicality will dictate that it's increasingly 6-2, somebody who can fill in the back line in case of a crisis. That strikes me as the smart coaching move.
Yeah, Could we go with squad sizes of 24 where you have to have 3 backs and you're allowed to have 6 forwards? Would that solve it?
No,
I don't know the answer.
Then they'd go, well, we've got 7. We've a 7.
No, you'd have to pick.
Yeah,
but then
you're
going
like, Quagga Smith is a back.
Yeah, but then you're going into designated players, which they do for the front row. So you have to say before a game, for example, Tyg Furlong, he can cover tight head and he can also cover loose head, and he's done it enough times in training that we can stand over it, and he can actually cover hooker as well. That's covered and that is important because that's where you fall into having to take a player off, or can he cover? Because if you can't, you could end up having to go down to 14 players. Yeah, look, you're opening up a can of worms there. I don't know the answer, but it is a frustrating one.
Any other selection issues in the 15 for Ireland? Doris, they're very confident about. Every week they tell us Furlong has a chance. It's hard to know what's going on with his body. Hopefully he's on the return. Kelleher, we're not too clear about. Conan had stiffness in his back, but they're very confident he'll be fine. So, I mean, if Doris plays and Conan's on the bench, immediately you feel a lot better. Are there any... The centres pick themselves, presumably, given Ringrose's suspension. So, Keenan comes back in, I'm presuming?
Yeah, largely unchanged. I think the big decision is what they go with in the second row. Is it McCarthy and Ryan, and then moving Tyg Byrne to 6? And while it's tough on Jack Conan to be pushed back to the bench, this guy's mastered being an impact player, and it is a real skill, and it's what Ireland needs. And look, this guy's a team player. I think he'd prefer to be starting. We all know that. But he'll also know that come 50, 55 minutes, he's going to be coming on and he's going to have a huge say on the outcome of the game.
Yeah. And presumably McCarthy Ryan with Byrne at 6, that is just big boys.
Yeah, good ballast there. And that's what you need against France.
Who do you think are favourites for it? Ireland, just, or like you wouldn't even go so far as to call?
Who are the favourites, or who do I think is going to win? I think we're just favourites, maybe 1 point. I think was the latest.
And you agree with that? It's that tight, or?
Yeah, I think home advantage. You look back to the last game where we beat them at home, and we won well away last year. A bit of an asterisk to that game. Obviously, Dupont wasn't playing, and France played really poorly that day. I think we possibly got a bit carried away with how good we were. Look, it was a very good performance, but we also got a side that weren't going a yard that day. They were dreadful. We will get a very, very different French team. I expect Penaud will come back into the team. Saw a small bit of the Bordeaux-Clermont game last night. He played well. He looked like a guy who had a point to prove, clearly being told, message from the coach, look, if we see this, that, and the other, maybe he'll come back into the team. He's been given a rocket, and sometimes you can get a big boost from a player like that. That's a point to prove. He's delighted to be back into the team. He doesn't think that his selection is guaranteed. I'm concerned about this game. I think France are going to beat us. So I hope I'm proven wrong. And I think if we do certain things really well and we put our very, very best game on the pitch, we can win. But I'd be concerned about the speed the French have, and couple that with if they can get on the front foot, that's how they can expose us. And Gary is a loss at 13 because he's our best outside centre defender. His agility, his speed, his ability to read is a loss. You can get away with Bundee and Robbie, and look, they're both top quality players, and they've done it for us loads of times. But at the very highest level, when you've got the likes of Penaud and Biel Barry running across you, that's where they may have an edge.
Interesting. I didn't think you were leading up to that.
I know, I'm kind of gutted with myself, to be honest. I hadn't planned to say that, but yeah, look.
Yeah. So give us one more line on it then. Expand on it. France to win. Give us those bullet points again of what's crossing your mind when you're saying that. Their speed, their power, us missing Ringrose.
Yeah, and we're 2 weeks out. We don't know selection. If we can get like Furlong back, Doris back, Kelleher back, that helps big time. the selection that France go with, the weather on the day. There's lots of other factors that are at play. France are a bit inconsistent. You can get them on a bad day, but they are a team that has a point to prove, and it's going to be a fantastic game of rugby. Yeah. It's going to come down to big moments. You're going to see the two best nines in the world going at it. Dupont is single-handedly probably worth 7 to 10 points. Now, what fills me with confidence is like when superstars play Ireland, they typically struggle to flourish because we've an excellent coaching team that typically comes up with a really good plan of nullifying these superstars. Like you look at the likes of Finn Russell as an example. He's never really played particularly well against Ireland because we've a plan to shut him down. They know his strengths. They know what he wants to have. We don't give him those opportunities. And Ireland will have a clear plan of how to stop Dupont. But it is difficult to execute that plan because you've got to stop 8 ginormous men getting on the front foot. That is the key to stopping Dupont.
Jeez, Jack McGrath's really had his way with you, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. He leaves a big
can only see the game through forwards now. Did a number on you.
Yeah, I'd rather be talking about the intricacies of back play. But,
yeah, no, they're going to smash us. Yeah. It's going to be such an occasion. 2 quick things before you go. Let's circle back to that point you made about the 20-minute red card versus a red card. Ringrose, in his defence, has no previous cards in an Irish jersey and 65 caps, and he's only been once yellow carded for Leinster, which is an extraordinary record.
Yeah,
he's played a lot of games. That to my eye, and there was disagreement in the studio with 3 people alongside me who obviously know the game to a far greater level. But to my eye, I just thought it was just a complete nailed-on red card. Not for a second did I think that was not going to be upgraded. And I probably didn't fully understand. I need to dig into the rules, 20-minute red versus red. I think at this stage, red is now like acts of thuggery. So it wasn't that. Yeah. But like, it was a definite 20-minute red card for me. And in old money, before the 20-minute red card, it was a definite red card. It wasn't a 10-minute sin bin. Like there was very little to defend the tackle.
Yeah, like if you're really clutching at straws, Gary's knees are bent, so he's not completely upright. But what goes against him is he's out of control. The speed that he's coming in at, the rules are now basically stating that if you're coming in at speed, you have to get your height right, otherwise it's a red card. And there's a lot of force behind that, and you know the head injuries or neck injuries you can get from that are really serious, and that's the directive. Look, we cannot have players out of control hitting. But the thing is with Gary, we've seen it so many times this year. When he gets it right, it has such a positive impact, and you don't want to take that away from him. You know, he's embraced this kind of blitz defending, but it just shows you that if you're a fraction off, the punishment is very severe.
As an aside, why Thomas doesn't go for HAA, I don't really know. You know,
yeah, I agree with you. The reality is with head impacts, and you can get hit really hard in your head and be okay and not be concussed, and I'm not going to say not need an assessment. That's the wrong way of putting it. But you can also be glanced and it looks so innocuous, and it can be really serious for you. It's different parts of your head are very different. Whether you're anticipating the impact of the collision also makes a difference. If it's a shock impact, like the one that we saw in the Scotland game, where the players aren't expecting head contact, they hit against each other, that's typically very serious because there's no bracing at all, no bracing of your neck. But yeah, it's the web of the concussion stuff. There was another one where the gum shield's gone off in one of the other games. I think it was actually, the Welsh game. You can see the prop waving the gum shield going, I'm totally fine. Something's obviously triggered this. Maybe he's clenched on it hard. So I'm not convinced on the technology of the gum shields, but they're doing all they can to try and find something that's going to make the game safer and prevent these concussions and undiagnosing them, which is probably the most serious part of it.
If you're in a scrum now and you've anything about you, you need to start flicking your opponent's gum shield. Let's finish with Scotland, England briefly enough then. It was drama, but not edge of seat drama for a lot of it.
Yeah, like England just went a way that they thought they would win the game. It's never good when you're being booed by your home support. They've paid to be entertained, and they weren't entertained. But at the same time, look, they've won, and it's easier to win and then change and try and play a better brand of rugby than it is to keep losing as they were and try and find a way to win. So it's frustrating when you're looking at the two Smiths and the likes of Slidehome on the wing and just not getting any opportunities. Like, I think I saw a stat that Finn made more tackles than he did passes. That's never great as an out half.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
But yeah, it was a poor game to watch.
Because I guess with Marcus at 15 and Finn of the Smiths at 10, there's an expectation with two playmakers that's the way they're heading. So it's doubly frustrating for the public, I'm sure, when they're going there with a certain expectation. But when you say the booing, if people missed it, I mean, it was like, it's kind of extraordinary moment. You wouldn't see it very often, where Alex Mitchell goes for a box kick and the stadium rings out in boos.
Yeah, and there was a clear directive from the coaching team, and I'm sure led by Borthwick, that look, when we're in this situation and the ball is here on the pitch, we are kicking it. And the biggest issue I had with that was there was multiple times in that game where England had created a half chance, and they just had no ability to kind of trust their instincts and override these rules that have been placed on them and realize, right, this is actually a good opportunity to play. I know the plan is to kick, but this is too good to turn down. There was none of that. And there was a suppression of the instincts that was what I had an issue with, because these are the best players in England. You know, you have to allow them an element of trust, and there has to be some sort of freedom within the game plan to go outside it when an opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's pretty much us done. Anything we've missed?
No, I'm kind of regretting going with France, but
too late now. It's probably already been clipped.
Can we do an edit on
that? Buy a whisker. We won't clip it. We'll just we'll leave it buried in there on whatever it was, 45 minutes. And it's, to be fair, things. Let's see what the teams are. Let's see what the weather is. Things can change.
Yeah,
you can change. You're allowed to change your mind next week. This isn't like this isn't not going to hold you to anything. You can change your mind 10 times over.
It plays out.
Yeah. All right, dude. Thanks so much, Ian Madigan. Pleasure.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks a million for having me on.